Welcome back, my friends. Today, let's do another dedicated question and answer video once a month on the community tab, my YouTube channel. I'll put out a question prompt such as this one. Down below, you can ask me anything about anything, then read each other's questions and thumbs up the ones you want me to respond to. Thank you to everyone who left a question and read other people's questions. The cutoff for this video was 50 thumbs up. So the most liked question was from Mikhail Olson, 1427, and he asks this. It's very frustrating and sad to talk to people who think we should stop supporting Ukraine and instead force Ukraine to negotiate with Russia. What do you think is the best way to try to convince them that they are wrong when pointing out the genocide doesn't seem to work? Thank you for everything you do. I hope we all meet in Ukraine one day. Well, the first thing to say is nobody can force Ukraine to surrender. If Western allies, the United States, doesn't want to send military aid, that doesn't mean Ukraine's going to surrender to Russia. It just means Ukraine won't perform as well. They still could, on their own, win this war. So that's the first point. The second point I want to make just has to do with behavioral psychology. There's something called loss aversion. Loss aversion is an important concept associated with prospect theory, and it is encapsulated in the expression, losses loom larger than gains. It is thought that pain of losing is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining. So for people who support Russia, they're not trying to make Russia look like the good guys. They're also not even necessarily trying to make Ukraine look bad, but they want to scare you that by supporting Ukraine, this is hurting you. You're going to pay higher taxes. You're going to experience higher inflation. America's southern border is the real crisis. Why do we care about Ukraine's border? This is what people like Elon Musk are doing. Elon Musk decided to go to the southern border of the United States to scare people about the situation down there. Now, America's southern border has been a crisis for 40 years. Elon Musk has never talked about or cared about the southern border until this month, because he's trying to raise awareness in order to panic people, to weaken support for Ukraine. He knows what he's doing. So for Americans, and I think your question relates to what Americans are debating this month, 64% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's very easy to say, well, if Ukraine just concedes territory to Russia, we can get back to business as normal with the Russians, I guess, and that'll somehow bring down gas prices. None of this is true. It's all lies. But you don't even necessarily have to argue with people. They're going to hear these scary arguments from people who support Russia. So to counter it, you need to focus on the people of Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are just like us, living in the West. They want true democracy. They want free and fair elections. They want to be free of corruption. The people, in my opinion, are very Western. I didn't know what the people of Ukraine were like prior to a year and a half ago, and I love these people. I think they're fantastic. So if the power of pain is twice that of the power of pleasure and gaining, then unfortunately you just have to be twice as loud about how wonderful the people are. That's why in my update videos, I'm always trying to share human interest stories, trying to show children of Ukraine playing on a playground, when it's been bombed out by the Russians, or a Ukrainian defender being kind to animals. Those have a powerful effect on these 64% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And even for people financially struggling, what's the expression? Sometimes it's the people who have the least who are the most generous. So I have faith in Americans and I have faith in the people of the West that if they just remember and think about the people of Ukraine, at the end of the day, they will do the right thing. Hey Jake, since Ukraine is already sinking the Black Sea fleet, what do you think an appropriate response from NATO would be if Russia used a nuclear weapon? So this video I made 9 months ago, why Russia will not use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, I answered this question. I'll link the video down below if you've not seen it. But if NATO were to respond, the honest answer is it depends on what Russia does with a nuclear weapon. If Russia uses a nuclear weapon on London, Berlin, or Kyiv, that's different than if they used a smaller yield tactical nuke on the battlefield to destroy a Ukrainian military position. It doesn't matter what the hypothetical is because Russia's been kind enough to give NATO almost 20 months to think about what they would do in response. So just off the top of my head, this is the list of potential responses that NATO could do. If Russia used a single nuke, NATO would not respond with a nuke, but with conventional forces, they could blockade all Russian sea and airports, the ports of St. Petersburg, the Baltic Sea, Vladivostok. The United States Navy could just say, nobody's getting in or out anymore of these Russian ports. Russia could still move stuff by rail across Asia, but the United States Navy could just make life for the Russian economy incredibly difficult. There's also unlimited cyber warfare. Private actors like Anonymous hack Russia every day, but the United States Cyber Command, I don't believe, has gone all out on Russia's cyber infrastructure. So that's a potential. NATO could use their own planes and air defense systems to enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That could be an answer. Destruction of Russian forces in the Black Sea, destruction of Russian forces in the Baltic Sea, destruction of Russian forces in Kaliningrad, which would be my favorite option, destruction of Russian forces in Moldova, destruction of Russian forces in occupied Georgia, destruction of Russian forces in Syria, which I think the United States military would love to do, destruction of Russian forces in the occupied territories somewhere, and then Ukraine would definitely get more military aid and supplies. So those are the potential responses. Next question. Hey Jake, long time since I heard about GLSDB, the cheap long-range munition. Do you have an update? Unfortunately, no. This announcement from Boeing and Saab back in June, this is June 22nd, this is the last press release that Boeing and Saab has given about GLSDB, claiming it's not going to start arriving in Ukraine until this fall. It's already October 4th, so by definition, fall is this month or next month, November. And the promise of GLSDB is thousands, tens of thousands of GPS-guided bombs that can be launched from HIMARS that are so cheap, about $50,000 per bomb, that Ukraine can just unload these on anything it wants. Gimlers are not as common, they're much more expensive, the United States can only make so many of them a month. But when GLSDB arrives, this is going to be a very bad week for the Russians within 150 kilometers of the front lines. Every couple days I do a Google News search for GLSDB and there's honestly been nothing since June. So I don't think we're going to get news coverage until the first bomb actually drops, but I'm assuming Boeing and Saab are on this and delivery will occur in the next 2 months. This is a good question from Michael. ICBM-style missiles are notoriously difficult to maintain and keep serviceable, considering that Russia basically proved it can't maintain trucks and tanks. Do you think the reason they haven't launched any nuclear missiles is that they don't want us to know that most or maybe all of them don't work? I have my doubts about Russia's ICBM fleet and road mobiles across Siberia, I'm sure they're in total disarray. But if Russia wanted to launch a nuclear weapon, they would probably use a bomber or a submarine. They wouldn't use their ICBM fleet. And for those who don't know, I used to be a missileer. I was an operator of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile system. And when I went to work, I would spend 24 hours in a launch control capsule monitoring up to 50 launch facilities. And every time I went to work, every day at work, at least one of those 50 ICBMs would break. Something would stop functioning properly, and we would get an alarm, and a maintenance team would have to respond. So if that's what it's like for the United States, given everything that we do correct to maintain all of our weapons, I imagine Russia's ICBM fleet is an absolute nightmare, because Russian High Command has other priorities. When you talk about allocating men or funds or maintenance or parts or resources, no, their road mobiles in Siberia are not a top priority anymore. It's the ground forces getting their asses kicked in Ukraine. So here's a map of what the United States' nuclear fields look like. I just want to share this information with you guys for fun. There are 150 launch facilities in North Dakota, 150 in Montana, and then 150 spread out over Wyoming, Colorado, and Nebraska. And let me show you one. I can show you a missile alert facility. So here's Minot. Here's Minot Air Force Base. This is where I lived for the last 4 years. And if we go up the road, this is about a 25-minute drive or so. We can turn on satellite images. And I can show you right here. This is Oscar 01. This is a missile alert facility. So there's not actually a nuclear weapon here. All the launch facilities are spread out by 3 kilometers to make them all survivable. But this is where the launch control capsule is, where 2 missileers are sitting 60 feet underground. I'm not giving away any classified information here. All of the facilities are known locations. You can drive past them. You can see them on the roads. Wikipedia is even kind enough to have the latitude and longitude of all of these facilities. So they're there. Russia knows they're there. Nuclear deterrence never takes a day off. Here's the million-dollar question. Why is Elon Musk such a Putin fan? And my theory is that Elon Musk is just a globalist. He's deeply intertwined with global supply chains for his rockets and cars, and he does a lot of business with authoritarian regimes. Elon Musk visited China for the first time since COVID back in June, and Elon Musk loves China, says nice things about China all the time. He loves his Shanghai Gigafactory, he loves his car sale numbers in the Communist Chinese Republic. And what Elon, I think, has realized is that doing business in dictatorships is a lot easier than doing business in democracy. In a dictatorship, you don't have to worry about labor rights, you don't have to worry about consumer protection laws, you don't have to worry about environmental protections. This is the next big one, but Elon loves that he doesn't have to give campaign donations to politicians in authoritarian regimes. All the elections are rigged, so people don't really need to campaign because state media tells everyone who to vote for. So Elon made his first $200 billion in the West, in democracies. And this guy wants to be the first trillionaire ever. And he knows to become the world's first trillionaire, he needs to make a lot of money in authoritarian regimes. Russia, China, Saudi Arabia. So Elon the last 2 years has been incredibly careful not to say anything negative about China or Russia. They are military allies. And he wants Ukraine to just give the Russians what they want so that we can go back to business as normal. He doesn't have to risk his businesses. Elon doesn't actually care about free speech or democracy or human rights. If China wants to commit genocide of the Uyghur population, Elon doesn't care. If Russia wants to commit genocide in Ukraine, Elon doesn't care. Elon just wants to make money. How realistic is getting frozen Russian assets to help pay for the restoration of Ukraine? Thanks, Jake. So the question of this $300 billion of frozen Russian assets, they're in Western banks. And the Western banks are holding them. So it's not as simple as, can the government of France or the United States or the government of Germany just give this money to Ukraine? There has to be a legal process, and the banks are going to fight it. The banks are going to try and protect Russia's money, because if the government of the United States can take money out of a private commercial bank and give it to Ukraine, well, that's going to make other authoritarian regimes around the world very nervous. China won't want to hold their money in Western banks. Saudi Arabia won't want to hold their money in Western banks. So Western banks are trying to protect their reputation. They're trying to protect their investors, clients. So in order to get this money out, there has to be a legal process, and Russia has to participate in it and accept the results. So what the West is doing is they're waiting for Russia to lose this war, go to the negotiating table, participate in the legal process in a courtroom to have this money given to Ukraine. That's the complicated answer why this money isn't being immediately used. Could the United States government just tell Bank of America, you've got to release this money and give it to Ukraine for reconstruction? They could, but there'd be a lot of people in the banking world very upset if that were to happen. Jake, thanks for your unwavering support of Ukraine. My question, why do you think the richest individuals in the world seem to be coming down on the side of Russia? Is it as simple as the rich closing ranks on the poor to protect their wealth? Musk's mocking of Zelensky is heartbreaking. So there are lots of rich people on Twitter, millionaires and billionaires like venture capitalist David Sachs or Grant Cardone, who have been promoting Kremlin propaganda this week. And even someone I really respect, like Bill Ackman, has been not sympathetic to Ukraine, saying we need a deal, we need to negotiate. And the reason why all these millionaires and billionaires and venture capitalists hate the war in Ukraine, it's not necessarily because they like Russia or they dislike Ukraine. They just want to go back to business as normal. So here's the Federal Reserve's federal funds effective rate. It's currently at 5.33. This is the highest it's been in 15, 16 years. This makes it more expensive to borrow money. Venture capitalists love borrowing money. It slows down the economy. If it's more expensive to borrow money, people aren't buying new cars, they're not buying new homes, they're not taking out small business loans. So this is constricting the money supply, putting pressure on global markets, and freaking out billionaires because they don't like seeing their investments and portfolios go down. Additionally, we've got another problem with the US 10-year Treasury yield. This is how much money you can get on your money risk-free as long as the United States government doesn't collapse. So you can see the 10-year Treasury yield was 3.2% going back to April, and now it's 4.7%. So when you can get this high of a return risk-free at your local bank buying a CD or a Treasury bond, you're not putting your money into corporate bonds. You're not putting your money into municipal bonds. You're not buying real estate. You're not putting your money in stocks or startups or SPACs and IPOs. So venture capitalists and people on Wall Street, they hate this. They hate that money is being sucked up in US Treasury rather than going into private equity and the public markets. And this is being fueled partly because China is dumping their US debt. China fuels US bond rout by slashing holdings to a 14-year low. China knows that if they make a move on Taiwan in the next 3 or 4 years and they go to war, then no, the United States government is not going to make their interest payments to the Chinese government on any debt they're holding. So by China dumping their bonds, this is causing the yield to go up. China's doing it at a loss. They're losing money selling their bonds before maturity, but China doesn't care, and I think economically things are going to get worse the next 3 months. I'm hoping this global economic strain is worse for Russia than it is for Europe and North America, but we're all going to have to strap in and ride this roller coaster together. Next question. Thanks for your continued amazing work on the coverage of this conflict. We all appreciate your hard work, mates. Slava Ukraini. Thank you so much for Tomika. And I'm just going to put a plug in this video. If you guys want to financially support me, you can sign up and become a channel member for as low as $2.99 a month. I also do have a Patreon if you prefer Patreon, but something I've not told you guys in a video yet is I'm not doing channel sponsorships anymore. No disrespect to Ground News or Surfshark VPN, they're fantastic companies, but I've never been completely comfortable plugging, a VPN in the middle of a broadcast in which I'm talking about the war in Ukraine. I did it because the money was good and I thought these are reputable companies. I wouldn't promote anything that I thought was a scam. But I've decided that I don't want to do sponsorships anymore. I've put a hold. I've told my sponsorship manager that I'd like to take a break. So to counter that, if you guys want to support me directly rather than paying for a VPN or Ground News, I'd appreciate it. I'm currently looking to buy a home. I'm 39 years old and been renting my whole life. It'd be really nice if I could buy a home, and that's what I've been working towards and saving up for. Financially, I'm doing great. Don't feel any pressure here. I want to make sure you guys are taking care of yourselves, and Ukraine is being taken care of before me, but just putting the plug out there. I'll put the links down below for you guys. Once the war is over, however that looks, what would you cover on the channel? Would you shift your focus to other conflicts taking place around the world? I think this would be valuable, especially when there's so much going on that people aren't aware of. Love your work. So it's kind of a coincidence that I got into YouTubing, and I also have a master's in international relations. When I joined the Air Force, my goal was to eventually get a job with the State Department. I wanted to be a Foreign Service officer. So my entire life, I've been plugged in and engaged to world events, current events, very interested and informed about global politics. And yeah, I think it's definitely helped me the last year and a half, the fact that I'm a service veteran with 6 years experience as a missileer. And it's crazy. I mean, nobody is more shocked than I am that I have 405,000 subscribers. To put this in perspective, Peter Zion is a best-selling author with 4 books who posts daily, and he has 599,000 subscribers. So the fact that little old me can even be in the same category as someone like Peter Zion, I hope to get him on the channel someday, it's pretty cool. So yes, I think if Russia were to collapse and Ukraine won this war and there was less hard news to talk about every day, I probably would focus on geopolitics, talk about other conflicts around the world, other events. I did live in South Korea for 6 years teaching English, so I'm very familiar with the history and the cultures of that region of the world. Should China become more militant, I would make myself an expert on China. I would try and learn everything I could possibly learn in order to make update videos for you guys and get out useful information. So yeah, I probably will continue talking about geopolitics. I was talking about finance and investing topics prior. If you want to go back and see my videos from 2 years ago, I can always make these kinds of videos again, but generally the YouTube market for finance and investing content isn't as big as global events. If you could sit down with Putin for a one-on-one conversation, what would you say to him that you believe could have an impact on his decisions? The unfortunate answer is nothing. There's nothing anyone could say to Putin to change what he's doing. So if I had the opportunity to meet with Putin, I would use that opportunity to eliminate him. That's like asking, what would you do if you could see Hitler in 1943? Take the guy out. So Putin, he's 71, and he knows what he is. He knows he's a mass murderer, but he's going for glory. Like Napoleon and Hitler and Julius Caesar, he's just trying to cement his legacy even if he's only remembered by the Russian people. And in my update video from last week, I mentioned that in the last 23 years under Putin, almost 100 new monuments to Joseph Stalin have been erected. After Stalin died and Khrushchev took over, there was this period of de-Stalinization. Back in the 1960s, the Soviets were smart enough to realize that Joseph Stalin was a monster and that they couldn't sustain the system under that level of brutality. So under Khrushchev, there was a de-Stalinization period, and here we are back in the 2000s, and Putin's trying to make Stalin great again. Why? And Stalin was a mass murderer, same as Putin. So if we can make Joseph Stalin great again, then history will remember Putin just as good if he can somehow win this war and get back the Baltics, get back the Caucasus, get back Central Asia. That's what Putin wants. He wants to be remembered by history in the same level as Joseph Stalin. Hi Jake, have you or would you consider running for office? Your strong communication skills, empathy, ethics, and devotion to truth make you a formidable candidate. Thank you for all you do. I would love to run for Congress. That would be so cool, but the problem with me is that I'm a huge introvert. I am successful on YouTube because I'm perfectly comfortable sitting at home in my pajamas all day alone making YouTube videos. But for members of Congress, let's just be honest, the job is biased towards extroverts. People, well, what's the expression? Kissing hands and shaking babies? I'm sorry, shaking hands and kissing babies. That's what you gotta do as a politician. You're in meetings or on the phone all day, every day, asking for campaign donations, asking for support. I don't physically think I could do that. But I could be someone's chief of staff. If there are any members of Congress or extroverts that want to run for Congress and they'd like my political help on their campaign or as a staffer in DC, that'd be pretty cool. That's something I would never rule out. If the worst happened and the US withdrew support, would European support still be enough for Ukraine to win back all their territory, or at least Crimea? Because countries right next to Russia, such as Finland and Poland, seem more than willing to go all in to see Ukraine stops Russia. So this isn't even a contest when you talk about wealth and industrial capacity. So let's pretend that the United States becomes isolationist again, and they don't want to support Ukraine. If you just look at the largest economies in the world, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy, it's no contest compared to Russia with their nominal GDP at 2.2 trillion. The combined economic power of the European Union is 16.6 trillion US dollars. The only reason why Russia is able to hang in this fight is because of their vast stockpiles of armored vehicles and weapons that were made 40, 50, and 60 years ago. So, if the European Union had the political will, the economy of Russia is 2.2 trillion, the EU is 16, that's 8 times greater. They should be able to make enough artillery shells and provide enough ammunition and medical supplies and everything you would need to easily defeat Russia. But it's a question of political will. Hungary is a problem. Slovakia could be a problem. Germany is kind of divided. France is currently losing all of their secret colonies in Africa with governments being toppled. So Europe's kind of divided and a mess. So that's what's holding them back. But I don't think this is a problem you need to worry about. Despite what's going on in Congress this week, I'm still confident that a bipartisan bill funding Ukraine for another 12 months will be passed by Congress. It's just going to have to wait until November, but there will be a vote. That's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much to everyone who left a question and supports my channel. I frequently reflect on this, but I feel like I have the greatest job in the world, just making YouTube videos for you guys. Currently, my father's in town, which is why we're doing a podcast with Georgie yesterday and a Q&A today. But in 2 days, when my father leaves town, we will be back to regular update videos. Thank you so much to everyone. I appreciate the support. Till the next video, take care.